Hello and welcome to quite a sad episode of Velocity Kinetics. Those who've been keeping an eye on the page or just in general the F1 news, has been a very sad announcement out of, I keep doing this wrong, it's not Sergey, but he was related with the team, out of Williams. A very, very sad announcement, and I will go more into it later. This will be a very, very brief video, as we've already got a video out this week, and I'm in the middle of my work day. Shouldn't really be recording this in the middle of my work day, although training we're doing has come to a standstill, as in they need to show us examples and they haven't got the examples, but that's not really the issue. What has happened makes me very sad. It's very negative, and we shouldn't remember the team solely through rose-tinted glasses. But enough of playing with camera filters just to keep myself entertained. So what's had me pretty upset, bummed down, annoyed, concerned? It's the news that's come out of Williams today. The fact that they might be selling the team. I shared the post on Velocity Kinetics earlier on today. Since then, there's been varying reports of saying, no, they've definitely been put up for sale, and some saying, no, it's just the board saying it's a possibility. Now, for a team like Williams, the mighty Williams, producing some of the best looking cars that have ever stalked the F1 grid, like the FW18 and the BMW Williams in their navy and white, and mastering the step nose look with the FW34. The only other team to have won in recent years. Let's put this into perspective, something Williams can claim. They are since 2012, they are the only team outside the top three that has won. That was Maldonado in 2012. No other team can lay claim to that. Unfortunately, they've also got another record of, I believe it's the longest between race wins, the longest period, and Ferrari might be slightly longer, but I think usually Ferrari manage a win in a season. But certainly at the very least, it's well up there with the amount of time between victories, not including excluding Mercedes from that statistic, because they are also the only team that could take it to Mercedes when turbos came in this time round. They were the only team that got close. They were in, was it 2014, 13, the first year of turbos? They were the only other car to get a pole position. That was Massa in Austria. And then Massa and Bottas took the lead in Silverstone as well. They have a large number of cars that should have won races but didn't. It's hard to know where to plot the fall of the team, and it is a fall. There is no other way around it. They wouldn't part with equity to keep Adrian Newey in place. Just think of what a powerhouse they would have been if he had stayed in the 90s, because look at what he went on to get championships with McLaren, and then all the ones he's won with Red Bull. If nothing else, if you don't want to count in terms of championships, just count it in terms of race wins and podiums. They wouldn't partner up properly with BMW to have a proper works effort. They were in an engine nightmare for years because they were powered by a Toyota engine. I appreciate it's probably because they had Nakajima on staff. And if you can get your engines at a discount, then why wouldn't you get your engines at a discount? But a Williams Toyota that really didn't do it. I think it scored a couple of podiums, that combination. But you can count the number of podiums on one hand with fingers to spare. They didn't capitalise on the double diffuser, even though they were one of the teams that saw the loophole. Braun had it, and look at what they did. Granted, they had a Mercedes engine in the back, but Williams had found the loophole. Toyota had found a loophole. Williams and Toyota were kind of up there-ish in 2009, but never but never converted it. Close but no cigar. The team's downfall has been long, is the only way I can put it. The last driver championship won was Jacques Villeneuve in 1997. The last serious effort at a world championship was Montoya, and apparently what I've heard, it was because Montoya wouldn't put in the work. But that's Patrick Head speaking. He's notoriously quite hard on people, so I'd be curious to hear Montoya's viewpoint on what it was actually like in the team, or if someone can link me an interview to it. They've had over the course of the team's history, just as the Williams Grand Prix engineering, not Frank Williams racing cars, because that one on its own had quite a patchy past, although it did all come to head with, I think, was it Pierce Courage? I think so. It's someone that even now Frank still feels very responsible for dying at the wheel of one of his cars. The team have had some amazing highs. For instance, the championship of Alan Jones, Nigel Mansell's championship, the 2012 race victory, the numerous podiums they scored. They've got the record of being the team unless they ever bring double points in, or unless they change how points are done completely, they will still have the most points scored over a weekend because of double points in Abu Dhabi, where Massa and Bottas got a 2-3. Massa was so close to making that a 1-3, and that would have been even more points, but they hold that record, which is never likely to be broken. They've also had some horrible lows. The lowest that I would say would be, and I don't think there'd be anyone who would argue with this is why I stipulate in Williams Grand Prix engineering, the lowest low that the team ever experienced was losing Ayrton Senna, which you don't need to be any sort of F1 guru to know that is one hell of a loss for any team to have on their books, whether it was McLaren, Ferrari, Williams, Benetton, Jordan. That is one hell of a loss to have on your books. As to what happens next, this is what upsets me, concerns me, agitates me. I don't know what is going to happen next. The team, we did a video a few weeks ago about the team refinancing some credit they had, which might have been something that was going to happen anyway. But the team have posted, which is what's triggered all this, they've posted a £13 million loss. In terms of F1 though, that is chump change, but it is still a loss. And that's not, regardless of how good or bad of a bean counter you are, that is a lot of money. They've also split with Rocket, who are the title sponsor. So when racing does get underway, if Williams hasn't completely gone belly up by then, they're not going to have... I wasn't sold on this year's design very much, but they're going to have a new livery. They're going to have to rebrand again. And I thought the Rocket title sponsorship was a done deal for years. So unless there's not been another Rich Energy situation go on, as in sponsors overpromised and under-delivered, Williams apparently delivered on all their contractual obligations, so I don't know what's going to happen. What I can see happening, there are a few different scenarios that have run through my head, and they're all... The worst one, which I don't think you'll find a fan of Formula One who'll be like, okay, bye-bye Williams, bye-bye, bye-bye, go on, go away. Who would like that? Everyone, I think, wants Williams to stay because in some ways they still embroil that Minardi spirit, or rather the spirit that Minardi had, which initially Williams had, as in underdog fighting. Who doesn't like an underdog? The worst case scenario is the team completely just disappearing. Shutting up shop, no more Williams Grand Prix engineering, no more Williams Formula One team, all the show cars get repossessed, all the heritage cars that are still left get repossessed by HSBC, and the team just sinks into oblivion, massive layoffs and redundancy. Well, I wouldn't even sure it would be redundancies. I'm not sure they even have the money to do that. but then that would mean thousands of CAD people, designers, engineers, mechanics, pit crew, you name it, they will be out of a job. Now, given that Williams is in Motorsport Valley, they should be able to get picked up again. However, because other teams will have cut the budget, they'll potentially be out of work for a very, very long time. So that is the worst case scenario and a frightening reality. There is no other way to put it. There are two scenarios I can see happening in my head. Now, one of them is this is just if it hasn't actually happened, the stories at the moment at the time of recording are so conflicted that I don't know whether they actually are up for sale, unless they're going to be like Toro Rosso, stroke Sat, Alpha Tauri, that is, that were up for sale for years and have apparently been up for sale for years, but no one's ever actually bought. That might happen, but what I can see happening is it's just because it's been mentioned as a possibility, at least in the reports I've seen. That's just it. It's just a possibility. It could be a ploy to get more investors in. It could be a motivating factor of someone saying, hey, if we don't sort this out, we are gone. It could be someone having to make a very loud and very public, we need to sort our shit out kind of deal. And it might very well simply be that. And I'll be very happy if it is that. Because for years they're always going up, we're on about we're restructuring, we're moving this, we're doing that. And it comes to nothing. All the time. It comes to nothing. Oh, we're going to do very well with Ep.73, the thing's going to do. One of the worst cars ever designed. Mike Coughlin comes in, sorts that out. FW34 with the Renault swap. Yes, we're going to be back up there. And if Maldonado hadn't been such a stupid twat and a bit of a cunt in the way he drove, you know what? He probably could have been on the podium. That car could have possibly won another race or two. I think that season, at most, if I remember the positions the car was in, if they had the foresight or had the ability to retain Rubens Barrichello, the car could have probably won in total probably about 4 or 5 times. Granted, not massive victories, but it could have still been a multiple race winner. So at the very least, a multiple podium visitor. You then get to FW35, Mike Coughlin screws up, like, oh no, gotta go, you get restructuring, getting Pat Simmons. FW36, very low drag, very fast, doesn't cope very well on high downforce tracks, lose lots of positions, but it's really good because no one else mastered the conditions. FW37, well, we're still staying with what we're working on, that's all brilliant, we're still getting there, but we slipped a little bit back. FW38, they slipped back again. FW40, they slipped back again. 41, they slipped back again. 42, new designer, new way of doing things. They're at the back of the fucking grid again. Never mind what other reshuffles they've done in the 90s, in the early 2000s, in the 80s, heck, even any they did in the 70s, but even then they were kind of on the up and up, so there probably wouldn't have been that much shifting around in the 70s. But I'm really hoping this is just a sort our shit out. That this is how I know some people would quote WTF1 Matthew Gallagher, I'm not a fanboy, I'm just passionate. I don't care what you call me about that. I don't want the team to disappear. I really, really don't. I'm sorry about the banging. I'm banging my table because I'm that frustrated about what's happening. The other scenario I can see is some sort of tie-up. You've had Haas on the fence about leaving. You've had Renault on the fence about leaving. And Williams are potentially going to be disappearing. Then merge. So you might have a Williams-Renault Grand Prix Engineering or Williams-Haas. That probably wouldn't work very well. But you might end up with some sort of tie-up like that. Those are the three so that's the three most likely I can think of. This current turbo era in many ways hasn't been that kind to Williams because of the extra costs involved in the turbo engines. That said, it was a small price to pay to have the best engine in the back of the car when they were using it to the best of its ability. But the fact they've had shit chassis, they might as well have had a Honda in the back of there. Maybe that's a bit too extreme on how much Honda have progressed and what they've done with Red Bull. But they might as well have not had a Mercedes engine in the back of there, or a Ferrari engine. They might as well have had a Renault or a Honda engine in the back of there, or just stuck an old Cosworth engine in from the Heritage Collection and prayed that no one noticed. It's been awful. But they also didn't think about trying to entice any works teams back in. The problem that Williams now find themselves in is if they are teetering on the brink, whilst they've got a brilliant facility all set up, it's ripe for anyone who wants to step in. So whether the guy who was behind Stefan GP decides he wants to try and slip in, I think there's a team Asia Pacific, I think it is, if I remember rightly, wanting to come in. But if they could find someone who could tie in with them, they've already got most of the facilities there. But it's not like they can't do what Sauber did with Ferrari without swapping to Ferrari power. This is because Sauber tied in with Ferrari. Ferrari got another brand out of the stable and branded it Alfa Romeo. Williams being powered by Mercedes don't own, to the best of my knowledge, don't own any other car manufacturers. They haven't had the foresight to try and bring the Cosworth or an Ilmor, try and get their own exclusive engine deal. They're lucky Mercedes haven't pulled the plug on their deal. They've been in a horrible place for years. Now, the team has always been about survival, even from the early Saudia days. It's always about sponsorship, not necessarily pay drivers, but who's going to sponsor the team the best, because they haven't got anything else to back themselves up with, much like Tyrrell or Ligier or Matra, all the other teams that fell by the wayside over the years. Their best hope maybe would have been a tie-in with Aston Martin, but Stroll's got Racing Point to become Aston Martin. There's no way to save it. Now, if Williams hadn't parted ways with Stroll, we might be having Aston Martin Williams, which would save the team. Nicholas Latifi's dad is a billionaire, so there might be a way to save it there, even if it's selling it to Latifi. But it is still... I can't put it into words what I think and feel about this. Aside from I'm quite upset by it, I'm quite distressed, quite alarmed. More than I ever thought I could be about something sporting related. The team found themselves, what I think has ultimately undone the team in recent years. They found themselves in a position where they didn't have the budget. Now, don't get me wrong, F1 was going to introduce a cost cap, and if they had introduced the cost cap, I think Williams would have been better. Probably would have been on the podium a lot more, maybe even had another cheeky win or two under their belt. But because F1 never imposed said budget cap, Williams have had to spend more than they would have wanted, and then finishing low in the constructors. They haven't had the same constructors power, even with the historical bonus that they get. It's just not adding up. Or they'll have a season where they do well, then they'll get that constructors money, not do well, and then they don't have the same amount of money for the next season. But the main fault of the team in recent years, the last time they had a properly experienced driver was Felipe Massa. Before that, it was Rubens Barrichello. Before that, you'd be looking all the way back to probably Mark Webber or Pizzonia. No, I don't think Pizzonia had that many races under his belt. You're probably looking at Mark Webber before Rubens Barrichello. For years, they've had very, very young lineups. I guess you could maybe start to class Rosberg as experienced. You could have classed Rosberg as experienced, really, I suppose, towards the end of his tenure at Williams. But for a long time, they have not had the most experienced of lineups. They had Stroll and Sirotkin. Stroll was effectively team leader in his second year in Formula One. Granted, Stroll was tutored by one of the best. He was tutored by Massa, and Massa had had time at Williams and to teach him how to do things, but supposedly Stroll, stories came out both ways. Stroll wouldn't learn, Massa wouldn't teach. Whether that really happened, you don't know. But Stroll and Sirotkin, very inexperienced lineup. I'm going to exclude the Russell and Kubica lineup from this, because Kubica wasn't a rookie, but he wasn't experienced, if that makes sense, in the sense of he'd not properly driven a car regularly of that nature with his condition. But it wasn't like the first time he drove an F1 car with his condition, or the first time he drove an F1 car ever. So, but now they find themselves with Russell and Latifi. Now, Russell has got a lot of help and backing from Mercedes, and apparently he works really well. So maybe that might bring things through for him. But like I say, look at the pairings. Russell Latifi, Stroll Sirotkin, Maldonado Senna, Maldonado Bottas. And that Maldonado Bottas lineup, that was Maldonado's third season in the sport. They were doing okay when they had stability with Bottas and Massa being the regular drivers. I think that was the longest in recent years. That was the longest that they'd had a consistent driver lineup. Now that is quite scary that is the longest it had been, because whilst Rubens was with the team for 2 or 3 years, he had a different teammate. Whilst Maldonado was at the team 3 years, different teammates. If this video makes it to Williams, I'm not planning to tweet it directly to them or Facebook message it to them, or however you want to whatever you want to do. I'm just so upset by it. It upsets me beyond belief. There isn't anything else. Now, I hope for the sake of all the staff they got there and the drivers, and for the Williams family, that they can save the team. I really hope that Liberty will step in and save the team, even if it just turns the team into a donkey mule, as in a test mule team, as in, we've got these new rules, right, you build it, they'll test it, sort of thing. I just don't want that team to disappear off the grid, especially one with such an illustrious history. And it's a history that most teams would kill to have. Manor or Caterham would have done all sorts to have their history. And I'm going to have to end this video there, because I would keep going on and on and on, and probably just getting more and more and more wound up, upset, agitated, whatever you want to call it. The video was only originally to be about 10 minutes, and recording length's nearly half an hour, so we'll see what happens. But Williams, please find a way of staying on the grid without lowering your dignity any further than it has been lowered, and that hurts an awful lot to say. But to the rest of our watchers, look after yourselves, have a good weekend, and we'll see what happens.